And you're welcome back to part 2 of California Matters. I'm Donagh McKeown. It never rains in Southern California, and for the longest of times it's hardly rained here in Northern California. They're in the middle of one of their worst droughts ever, and if it doesn't rain soon, it could be their very worst. Here's hoping from those grey clouds. Well, no grey clouds on this horizon, just a couple more people to meet. So let's meet one of those, Vincey Keane, who comes from South Galway, now lives in San Francisco, and he's been here for 30 years.
I was born and raised, I said, in a place called Foxdale Hill, which is a little, just two-house village in the parish of Beha in South Galway. And you know, I went to school in the local taking after the national school in Gort, County Galway. And then I went to Anco to serve my time as an apprentice. And I worked for a contractor in Gort called Peter Burke, who is still a great friend of mine to this day. I left Ireland. I was working and building houses and roofing them and doing all that kind of stuff and doing second fixing, what they used to call in Ireland at the time. So I left Ireland in 1982 and I went to New York. I worked all through the winter, but after spending a winter in the east coast of America, it was pretty hard going with the snow and everything. I moved out here in the springtime of 1982. My first cousin, actually, from Inniskin, County Clare, herself and her husband at the time had moved out here, and I stayed with him for a couple of weeks, and I've been here ever since. The first couple of years I worked here, I was, you know, we didn't have any contacts much here or anything like this. I was just trying to get going. So I was mostly working remodeling houses, you know, hanging doors and, you know, putting in kitchens and all this kind of stuff. But I realised after a while that you know, that there was like 1,000 other guys doing the exact same thing, and there wasn't very few people making windows, wooden windows, and I knew a bit about that because I had worked a bit at it in Ireland before I came out. So I started up a company with another guy first originally, which was called West Coast Windows, and we went for about a couple of years, and then we went our separate ways. And like, it was actually 23 years ago, 1991, I started up a Foxdale Hill Window and Door Company then, on my own. And sure, I've been at it ever since, you know. That was the name of the village that my mother came from, in honour of my mother, and it's like, you couldn't find it in the map in Ireland. So no, it's much better known in San Francisco than in Ireland, because most people, even in the parish of Beha, where I'm from, might find it tough to find Foxdale Hill, but you know, it's a pretty well known name around San Francisco now, because I've been in the business so long and worked with so many contractors and everything. And how easy was it, or is it, to get work like that, to make a business for an Irishman coming from where he came from? Well, you know, at the start it took a good while, because the biggest problem I think I had was that you know, I didn't have any real contacts here at all, and it really helps if you have. And this is our house, as I said, when it was built in 1914, and you can just see that there was one other house way down at the end of the street. It's the only house on the block at the time, and of course, like, you know, it's completely built up all around now. But this is one of the most famous pictures in all of America. You'll find that in any town you go into in the US. It was the building of the Empire State Building, and here is all the guys having lunch, and they're sitting up on the beam like hundreds of feet up from the ground, and it looks like the most dangerous thing in the world, where you can see how relaxed they are. And this guy here and this man here came from Shenaglish, the same village as where I'm from. This man here's name is Sonny Glynn, and this man is he's an O'Shaughnessy, I forget his first name now. And they were, I think they were married to two sisters or something like that. They were connected anyway, and both of them ended up being in this picture. We did a bunch of recordings at Whelan's pub in Shenaglish in County Galway, which is the only pub in the village and the parish that I come from. There's only the one pub, and it's down by the church there, and it's owned by Mikey Whelan. And actually, it's a great place to play music. I started having sessions there like about 10 or 15 years ago, when I used to go back for the summer. So we talked about that we should do a kind of an impromptu recording. We wanted to have it like as organic as possible, like where, you know, there was going to be no rehearsing or anything. It just, whatever came up was going to be the way it was going to be. So we set it up there, and we did 2 different sessions in July of 2010 and July in 2012. Walking on the railroad, wagon on the railroad, good buddy, for $1 a day. Get my money and get my pay. Take the hammer, take it to the captain. That worked out fabulous, and we had a great time doing that. And I think it's kind of a good, almost a historical record of what you might find in a rural place anywhere in the west of Ireland, or maybe anywhere in Ireland, in the rural parts of Ireland.
And a big thank you to Vince Keehan. And Vince, when not making those windows and doors, could be seen performing at various locations across San Francisco, singing, writing and performing many of his own songs. Our next guest on the California Matters programme today is a man who came here over 20 years ago. He lives in Petaluma in Northern California, some 25 miles north of the city of San Francisco. John Crowley has been working in software. These days he's actively involved and in fact has created a whole community in his hometown.
So right now we're outside my cafe. It's called Aquas Cafe Foundry Wharf here in Petaluma. Opened about 8 years ago, 2006. And it's what I like to think of as the local community centre, the meeting place, the third space, if you will. So that whole concept of your third space, your first is your home, your second is your work, and your third is anywhere where you kind of feel a sense of belonging, a sense of place, where you connect with other human beings and create community. And that's the intention of this place. Of course, it's got to have great coffee and great tea and great beer and wine and great sandwiches and food, but the purpose of it is really to be a gathering place, a community centre. There's a pub in South County Dublin called the Magic Carpet, and that's where I grew up in. Pulled my first pint of Guinness when I was 12. I think I started working in the bar about when I was 12. Worked in the wine shop, worked in the lounge, worked as a lounge boy, I guess. Worked pretty much everything there, and that's where a lot of my roots and a lot of why I do the things that I do stems from there and what I saw there. A little place called Petaluma, about an hour's north of San Francisco, in what is considered the wine country. Back then, 20 years ago, it was very much an agricultural community. We had been known as the chicken capital of the world, producing something like 40 million eggs a week or some incredible number. I can't remember exactly what the statistic is, but that's what it was back probably about 50 years ago. It was the chicken and egg capital of the world. And was going through a change, I guess. It was not quite a bedroom community for San Francisco, but close enough to San Francisco. Had a lot of charm about it. I'd been living in downtown Frankfurt, Germany for 8 years, and suddenly moved to Petaluma, California, where we literally did have cows and chickens as our next door neighbors. The train used to come up here, and all the goods that were created here got loaded onto the trains and then onto barges down the Petaluma River to San Francisco and the world, I guess. A lot of what was made here for about a period of about 20-30 years of the First World War were stoves for the US Army. I have a small software design company, software design and production. We do reservation systems, airline reservation systems for cruise lines. But also what I do in this office is spend a lot of time on Aquas community, building community. The other part of our business is building community. We're probably one of the first companies on the planet where our main mission statement is to raise social capital and build community locally wherever you are. So we kind of haven't figured out a lot about that company yet, but we know our mission and we know what we're supposed to be doing,
and the rest will follow.
I didn't want to make it specifically like an Irish pub because there's parts of that aren't that great. You know, when I grew up there, you could smoke cigarettes there, you could do a whole bunch of things. It was mainly centered around the alcohol. And I didn't want that to be the case in this cafe. I wanted it to be centered around community. The kind of place where there's a lot of different activities and programs for every walk of life. I have some friends of mine who are in AA, and they have told me that this is a wonderful place to just come in, have a cup of tea, and there's no pressure to have alcohol, and they can have the whole evening here quite happily without drinking any alcohol at all. Even just looking at this week, tonight we've got bluegrass jam session. If you play bluegrass, and you can come out and play. The night before with that we had a lecture on cultivating compassion. The night before that I think we had games night, come and play cribbage. The night before that we had a lecture series on science. So again, very, very varied. We have mainly music. We use music for gathering people. Music is a great way of gathering people in a community, listening to music where people get to know each other. But on the other hand, we realize also that we also can provide for, I guess, the intellectual side of things and the more spiritual side of things, because there's many aspects to a person. You know, there's mental, there's spiritual, there's physical, there's emotional. And we try to provide as best we can for each of those aspects of a person.